Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC Guy. Today on the DCC Guy, I'm going to start a two-part video. Part one will deal with this particular locomotive. It's a British prototype, 060, made by Bachmann. And I'd be willing to bet you dollars to donuts, even though it is a British prototype, that it's made in the same factory in China and uses probably the same motor, the same gears, and other design specifications that are used on American locomotives of this type. So, in this part one, we will go ahead and deal with how to take this locomotive apart. And it's a little bit more involved than just taking a couple of screws out, because we do have to separate the cab from the locomotive body itself, and we'll get into the whys of that in a minute. And then in part two of the video, I'll show you how I'm going to put a decoder, a keep alive, and a speaker somewhere in this little locomotive, and it won't be in the cab. Okay, we're going to keep the cab clean so that, we don't see those components sticking out. So what I want to do now is go ahead. If you're only interested in how to install the decoder and other components, then you can skip ahead to the second video in this series. If you're interested in finding a little bit more about these little locomotives, then let's go ahead and take a look at this particular one and get started. Okay, I've gone ahead and zoomed in on this little collection of British prototype locomotives. These are all 060s. They represent different time periods, different paint schemes. Okay, so the one labeled Great Western represents the time period up till about 1934. And then after 1934, they stopped using the Great Western, and they went to this little emblem here on the side. It's the Great Western Railway initials in a very small 12-inch diameter, it's called a shirt button logo or herald. That was used until 1942. And then in 1942, they went to a much more high visibility GWR paint scheme that lasted until 1948, when the railroads were nationalized and put into British Rail ownership. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it takes to get this apart. Okay, I've got the locomotive in a foam cradle to protect it while we do this, and flipped it on its back so we can work on it. Now the first part in this is getting a couple of screws out that hold it in, and it's hidden under this coupler here. So let's pop those little coupler holders out, these neem couplers, and as you can see, I'm a KD user, so there are those. Okay, so you'll see right here at each end of the locomotive, there is a screw. So we just take a small Phillips head screwdriver, and we'll pull that out of there. I'm going to set these in the cradle here. Hopefully I won't lose them. Okay. So we'll get both of those out. And at this point, the locomotive just comes right apart, like so. Here's what we have to work with then. I'm going to put the locomotive chassis and the like aside, because we want to go ahead in this part of the video with getting the cab off of the locomotive. And I'll show you why here in a minute, because we need to get into here. Now, the first thing we also need to do is remove these two screws. These screws hold a weight inside the cab in place. So we want to get those out so we can free up the bottom of the cab as well. So I got two more screws to take care of here. Okay, so now that we've got those screws out, the cab should be pretty free to come out. Now, let me show you a couple of things you have to do first, though. You'll note here we have this stanchion and handrail here on the side. So you've got to relieve the pressure on that. So what I do is just take a screwdriver and put it in up here at the front and just pull that out gently. And that will pull this handrail out of that stanchion so that when you pull the cab off, you're not going to break your stanchion or your handrail. And don't do that because it's expensive to get these replaced. I had to call Bachmann in England and have them send me some. They don't stock these, and if you break one, they have to try to find an old shell that has some that they can scavenge them from. Okay, now, if you look inside here, there is a line between the cab here and the shell. And what you basically have to do is put a screwdriver in here and give it a little twist, both sides. And if you're real lucky and the assembler in China was not doing their job that day, they didn't put much glue in here. Now, I have had these come right apart without any problem. I have had some of these that I really had to work at separating the glue line. And typically what you'll find is right up here at the front of the cab, right here between the front of the cab and the boiler here, there's a little space, and you can put a number 17 X-Acto knife blade down in here and just kind of gently pry it apart. And you can see here it's starting to come apart for me. Okay, so I'm going to ease that, and it's apart. So that's the first part, getting that guy out. Now you also, so that you won't break it, and also to gain access to what I want to get to, you need to remove this lever here, and that came out fairly easily. Somebody didn't do a very good job of gluing at the factory that day. Now the thing that we want to get to, though, is right in here. And let me show you. What they've done is they've used the tanks on each side of the boiler as a place to put a weight. So if you reach down in here at the front of the cab and push, you can extract this boiler weight. Now, I have had these that are loose and will slide out just like this one just did. I've had them where they've used some kind of sticky tape in there to hold it in place. But you just slide that out like that. And you can see what you've got. You've got a U-shaped weight that fits right inside and all the way up to the smoke box front. Okay, so once you've got that out, this is the important part. You have tons of space in here for the components. Okay, so let me show you. This is my decoder that I'm going to be using. It's a Soundtrax Economy decoder with a UK prototype sound package. And it'll fit right in this little area down in here, like that. And the same goes for this is a TCS Keep Alive, and it will fit down in here, like so. Okay. And this is a TCS Sugar Cube speaker. And as you can see, it too will fit down in here. So there's lots of room if you go to the effort to find it. So now we have space in here for the decoder, the Keep Alive, and a speaker all down in there, and we can still get the chassis in. Well, that wraps up part one in this series on this locomotive here. I've shown you how to take it apart now. And so let's go ahead and move into part two and take a look at how you can install a sound decoder, Keep Alive, and speaker in one of these small locomotives. So let's go ahead and move on to the next video.